Hey there, Elizabeth Hines here from the Autoimmune Free Cooking Club, formerly Our Paleo Family. So the YouTube channel is still called Our Paleo Family because I haven't changed the name yet. Same kind of content coming at you. I've simply changed the name to be in line with the membership community that contains all the recipes, and we're doing functional medicine, health coaching. But I'm still going to be bringing you content here that is of course free like it has always been. So today we're making elderberry syrup. It's fall. If you've watched any of my videos before and heard me speak, I don't normally sound like this. I'm getting over some sort of virus that primarily affected my lungs and my throat. And so we had a great little experiment in my house with elderberry syrup. So I'll tell you about that in a minute. I think elderberry syrup really came on the scene hot and heavy last season. It was kind of starting the season before as a natural antidote and preventative measure for the common cold and the flu. So in my circle of friends, you know, for the most part, we all follow the same kind of lifestyle where we're trying to stay healthy with just the things that we can control, what we eat, just how we live our lives, you know, what the toxins we're exposed to and that sort of thing. Do we vaccinate? Do we not vaccinate? Do we get the flu shot, not the flu shot, that kind of thing. We're not going to get into all of that, but we try to put as few foreign chemicals in our body as possible. So a lot of us use essential oils, and when our kid or ourselves, when we get a cold or the flu, we try to treat it naturally. So elderberry syrup is a great alternative. You know, if you get the flu and you go to the doctor's office and they test you positive, they'll give you Tamiflu, or there may be a couple others on the market now. A lot of people have really bad side effects to that medication, and a lot of people say it doesn't really help them, or it may shorten the length of the flu by 1 day. But there has been a decent amount of research done on elderberry syrup in terms of preventing and then also shortening the length of a disease, of the cold and flu viruses. So we tried it last winter. My daughter got some sort of flu-like virus. We did some essential oils and elderberry, and it helped, and the rest of us took it. I'm holding this bottle. This is the bottle we bought at Whole Foods. It's this little 4-ounce bottle, and it was sugar-free, and it was $25. But we all started taking it. None of the rest of us got sick, and she got over it pretty fast. So this year I set out to make my own because it's a lot more economical. This 4-ounce bottle, $24. This is about a 400-gram bag of elderberries, which makes about 4 batches of syrup. When I make 1 batch of elderberry syrup, I'll get a quart jar full, which is 32 ounces. This is 4 ounces for $24, and I'm making 32 ounces for about $5. The elderberries cost $20, so I just divided that by 4. There's a little bit of other ingredients that are not super expensive, maybe at most $6 a batch. That's way, way, way cheaper. Okay, so it's very simple. You really just need the elderberries and water, but most people want to sweeten it. I like honey. I don't really like the maple syrup. Those would be the 2 that I would recommend. So honey, some good raw honey is a good sweetener. I'm going to go ahead and get this in. I want to tell you the rest of what I'm putting in. So you just want to weigh your elderberries. It's important to follow a recipe so that you know what concentration your syrup is in the end, so you can dose properly. So I've done that math and research for you, so I recommend you follow my recipe. So you want 100 grams of elderberries. I've recommended for a long time that you keep a kitchen scale. It makes baking a lot more accurate, but also it comes in really handy for things like this. So I have about 1.5 quarts, maybe up to 2 quarts. It doesn't really matter how much water you have at the beginning, 1 to 2 quarts of cold distilled water. I put in my 100 grams of elderberries, and I'm just going to bring that up to a boil. And once it comes up to a boil, you're going to simmer it until it reduces down to about 2 cups. I'm going to wash this out because elderberries have a compound in their seeds that's sort of like cyanide, so a poison. So it is important that you go through this process properly. And the cooking process will get rid of that potentially harmful compound. But because I did put my raw berries in here, I'm going to wash this out before I use it. So I'm just going to set that aside. So you just want to bring this up to a boil, let it come down, and simmer. Now, then you can add flavorings to your syrup if you want. I just go ahead and add them at the beginning. So one is a piece of fresh ginger. I'm going to see if I can just smash it. I can't. I just peeled it. I'm not going to grate it like I would normally do. I just want to kind of infuse my syrup with the ginger. So I'll just put it in like that and it will be strained out. I'm going to also add a teaspoon of cinnamon and a half a teaspoon of cloves. I think this makes it taste like applesauce. I think it tastes amazing. To be perfectly honest, my children don't care for the taste of it. I think they would like it better if it were just the plain elderberry. But I'm adding the cinnamon and the ginger and the cloves because they all have anti-inflammatory and immune boosting properties, which that's what we're doing. The whole reason why we're making our own elderberry syrup, why we're taking elderberry syrup, is because it helps to boost your immune system. And I'm going to read some facts just so I make sure I say it properly. Elderberries contain large amounts of vitamins A, B, and C, which help to stimulate the immune system. There has been some research that shows the complex sugars in elderberries also help support the immune system. There was a research study done in Israel that focused on exactly how the elderberry is working in the virus, and the results of that study were that if the elderberry was taken after infection, it prevented the spread of the virus through the respiratory tract. You know, sometimes you get a cold and it may develop into a more serious infection, sometimes even pneumonia. So that's what that's talking about, keeping the virus from spreading. And then they also showed 20% of study subjects showed significant improvement in their symptoms after 24 hours, 70% after 48 hours, and 90% said they were completely cured after 3 days. In contrast, the subjects that received a placebo, those that received the placebo took 6 days to recover. So why make your own? Again, to save a lot of money, but also to just be able to control what you put in it. So like I said, I wanted to put in cinnamon and cloves and ginger. So ginger, you probably know, is really good for any sort of digestive upset. So if someone gets a stomach virus, so the cloves in there, or sorry, the ginger would help with that. Cloves as well. But they're all just, the cinnamon, cloves, and ginger are all anti-inflammatory and immune boosting. And in my opinion, they taste good. So that's enough of a reason right there to include those, but you absolutely don't have to. So this is our process. We're going to bring this up to a boil. So I have this burner up on high. And as soon as it comes to a boil, I'll reduce the heat so it comes down to a simmer. And I'm just going to let it reduce. And I want it to reduce to 2 cups. And then I'm going to press it with my potato masher. Just kind of press all the goodness out of those berries. And I'll strain it. My strainer. Find my strainer. Then I'll add my honey. I use a half a cup of honey. I think that's plenty. I've seen recipes that call for up to 2 cups, which I can imagine would be just sickeningly sweet. So start with less. You can always add more. Then once you add your honey or your sweetener, you boil it again until it comes back down to 2 cups, and then you're done. And store it in a sealed container in the refrigerator. And I found, we still had all these little cups from, my kids would take liquid medicine, because they still do sometimes. And I used a Sharpie, and I wrote our name, and I marked the measurement for each of us. So we all take a different amount because we're different sizes, and so everybody has their own, and we take it every day. Now, about a week and a half ago, my daughter came down with some kind of virus, a cold, And I had just made my first batch of syrup. So we all had just begun taking it. I mean, maybe 2 days. Well, she hated it. She said it made her gag. She didn't like it. So who knows how often she took it. I watched her take it a couple times, but possible she threw it down the drain when we left the room. So she took it the very least, and a week and a half later, and she still has kind of significant symptoms. She's blowing her nose a lot, coughing a lot. My son took it once a day, and then when he got sick, so when she got sick, we started, the rest of us, or my husband and I started taking it twice a day. I think he might have even taken it 3 times a day. My point is, the one that took the most got the least sick. So it was my husband, and then me, and then my son, and then my daughter. She took the least. She had the worst symptoms. My husband took the most syrup, and he had the least symptoms. So I was just one little case study, but that's what happened in our family. So I kind of swear by it, and will continue to make this throughout the season. So I'm going to let this boil away, and I'll come back to you when we're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, so the berries and the water and our spices have been boiling away for just about 45 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and strain it and see if I'm at about that 2-cup mark. I wish I could make some sort of mark on my pan. I'll just eventually learn, but this is looking about right to me. Remember that you do want to be a little bit precise. I guess that's kind of contradictory, isn't it? A little bit precise. You want to measure your water, you want to measure your berries, weigh them, and boil them down to 2 cups so you have the proper concentration so you know what your dosing is. Okay, so I really need 2 hot pads, don't I? If I have way more than 2 cups, I will pour it back in. Now, something I meant to tell you before that I forgot is that you really want to wear an apron because the berries will stain, or at least wear something you don't care about. For those observant of you, I did change shirts. I did have on a black and white striped shirt before it was long sleeve. But as I am known to do, I spill coffee on myself, so that shirt is soaking. And I switched into a different one. So I'm just pressing these to get the juice out because it's valuable. I don't want to lose any. Look at that, yum. So my burner was still on. So I have just slightly over 2 cups. So we're going to go with that actually. I'm going to go ahead and pour it back in. I'll turn this back on. It's just very slightly over 2. Ooh. Pan was hot. I'll strain that again. Then I'm going to pour my honey in. Again, that was just a 1/2 cup of raw honey. I'll bring that up to a boil, let it simmer again, and get it back down to 2 cups. Some people, well, again, a lot of people put in a lot more sugar than I did, and so their syrup will be more syrupy. I don't put in that much sweetener, and I'm making a specific concentration, so mine will be more liquidy and not super syrupy. Do you know what I mean? Like maple syrup, super viscous. It's going to be a thinner consistency. Okay, so that's it. Again, we're just going to let it boil for a few minutes, and then I'm going to strain it again and store it. Okay, so we've boiled again for just about 10 minutes. I think that's going to be perfect. So I gave it a stir because there will be some sediment, which reminds me, before you take it, you need to give it a shake. Some of the sediment is the cinnamon and the cloves, if you use that, and some of it is actually from the berries. So just give it a shake in whatever container you're storing your syrup in. Let's see, how did I do? Okay, so here's the 2 cup mark. So I'm just a teeny bit over. I will write down in the notes, in the description, the dosing for my particular family. The general adult dosing, I think, was 15 milliliters. Children, it's like 5 to 10, depends on how big or little they are. That's why all 4 of us have a different, a different amount that we take. It's not super duper important. For just general immune boosting, when everybody's healthy, we take it once a day. Everybody's dosed just once a day. That is, I'm assuming my children take it when I give it to them. That's what we are intending. And when we're sick, 3-4 times a day. So because that's the instruction, when you're sick, just take it a whole bunch. That tells me that it's not super important, the dosing, but I like to just have some consistency, some idea of what we're doing, just for, no other reason than we're experimenting ourselves. Is this working? Is it worth even doing? Or do we need to go back and get our flu shots? Okay, so here's homemade elderberry syrup with a scientifically determined concentration. I will link my elderberries in the description box, but there are a bunch of them available. They even had them at my local Whole Foods recently. You can probably find them at like a co-op or health food stores, but it's very easy to get them from Amazon next day. So I'll link these. Obviously, you know how to get spices from your store and someplace to store it in, a little bit of honey or maple syrup to sweeten, and just a little bit of thyme, and that's all you need. So again, about $5 to $6 versus $24, and this is 8 times as much. So make your own homemade elderberry syrup and hopefully stay healthy this winter season. All right, thank you everybody. I will see you back here next time.